I'm standing in the nave of St Agnes Church, Cawston, in Norfolk, one of the most splendid churches in the whole county. The reason why I'm introducing the church to you from the inside rather than the outside, which is very splendid, is that it's pouring with rain outside. You might even be able to hear the sound of raindrops pattering on the roof of the church. This church is a magnificent building, far larger than was ever required by the needs of this small village of Cawston. And the reason for that is very simple. It was built to the glory of man rather than the glory of God. Wealthy cloth merchants and the dealer Pole family built this church as an expression of the magnificence that they could create, as an expression of their wealth. And so, like so many churches in this part of Norfolk, it was built large and magnificent, even though the congregation was never very large itself. One manifestation of that magnificence is to be seen in the roof, which is one of the finest hammer beam roofs in Norfolk. The end of every beam is decorated with angels. And in the olden days, when those angels were painted and the paint was still fresh, the wings of each angel was gaudily painted to represent peacock's feathers. Actually, many people at the time had the belief that angels, being heavenly creatures and therefore glorious, would have peacock's feathers, scintillating gems as their wings. Of course, not everyone in Cawston was rich, and that is why in the entrance to the church you have this old poor box with holes in the lid through which the wealthy members of the congregation could drop their offerings into the poor box. And then every so often the box would be open and the offerings distributed. In order to make sure that the offerings were properly and fairly distributed, the lid has got 3 hasps, 3 locks, and the keys to each of the locks would be held by a different person. One of them would be the clergyman in charge, and the others might be church wardens. There's even down here another hasp with a hidden lock, which looks like rivets on the outside, but underneath there are locks. In the 12th century, when this box was first built, the church was undergoing a period of great expansion. It was a period of crusades, including the Albigensian Crusade. And so as the church grew even stronger and more magnificent, so poverty stalked the land, returned soldiers, people affected by the various wars, and a poor box like this was very necessary. It was not only the rich people who banded together to make this church magnificent, but also the poor people. The various crafts got together in their guilds and paid for portions of the church. One of those guilds was the Ploughman's Guild, which used to meet at the Plough Inn. And once a year there would be a procession from that inn to the church in which a plough would be carried and then blessed to make sure that the coming harvest would be a fruitful one. When the Ploughman's Inn closed in the 1950s, the pub sign was hung up above the door, and a plough was brought here to be placed permanently in the north aisle of the church as a memorial to those times. St Agnes Church is one of the few churches in Norfolk to have retained its rood screen. One reason for that may be because the rood screen is a very open one. It doesn't hide the church, just separates the church from the goings-on around the altar. And therefore it would not have encountered so much wrath from the Puritans, who saw the heavy rood screens as a means of separating the ordinary people from God. One of the interesting things about the screen is the lower portion, on which various saints and figures in the church are painted. Like most things in the medieval period, the artists felt free to exercise their fancy. And so we have St Matthew reading his gospel with the help of a pair of spectacles. Right at the far end of the screen you have the figure of Sir John Shurn, or Dr. Shurn, a quack doctor of the Middle Ages, who was reputed to be able to charm the devil into a boot. And this was guaranteed to cure anyone suffering from gout. And so the good doctor is depicted holding a boot in his hands, and the devil, a rather disgruntled looking devil, peering out from the boot.